I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I've been best friends with Anna, who's also 27, since high school. We've been through almost everything together: awkward teenage years, messy breakups, and even moving cross-country to different cities. Despite our differences, we've always managed to stay close. Anna has always had a taste for the extravagant, while I'm more of the save-up-for-a-rainy-day type. She loves big gestures and grand plans, and I've always tried my best to keep up, even if it meant stretching myself a little thin at times. So when she announced her engagement in our group chat a few months ago, I wasn't entirely surprised. Her boyfriend of 3 years, Kevin, had finally popped the question, and Anna was over the moon. The group chat buzzed with excitement, with Anna dropping hints about a fairy tale wedding. Knowing Anna, I imagined it would be something elaborate, but I kept my excitement up for her. After all, it's not every day your best friend gets engaged. A few weeks later, Anna shared more details about the wedding. It wasn't going to be a simple local event. Nope, she had her sights set on a destination wedding in the Maldives. She painted a picture of a 5-day affair filled with beachside dinners, private yacht rides, and a sunset ceremony. She talked about it like a dream, and while it sounded beautiful, my mind quickly went to the practical side. The Maldives aren't exactly a budget-friendly location. Anna promised that she'd keep everyone informed about the plans, and about a month later, she sent out a Google Doc with the estimated costs. Flights alone would be around $2,000, the resort would be another $1,500, and there'd be an extra $500 for the group activities she had planned, things like snorkeling trips and a fancy dinner. She wrote that she understood it might be a stretch for some people, but hoped that those closest to her would make the effort. I remember sitting on my couch, doing the math in my head. That was $4,000, and that didn't even include the small stuff like meals outside of the planned events or souvenirs. I checked my bank account balance, and after paying my rent, bills, and dealing with an unexpected car repair a few weeks back, I realized I had about $1,000 to spare, and that wasn't extra cash. That was supposed to be my safety net. My job pays decently, but it's not high paying. I get by comfortably, but big expenses like this aren't in the cards without major sacrifices. I tried to focus on being happy for Anna, but the more I thought about the costs, the more anxious I became. A destination wedding was exciting, sure, but I'd have to empty my savings just to get there, and that didn't sit right with me. I hoped maybe there would be some alternative option, like joining them for part of the trip or staying somewhere cheaper, but Anna's messages made it clear that she was dreaming of all her friends being together in one place. For a week, I kept going back and forth, debating whether I could somehow make it work. I even considered picking up some extra shifts at work, but it still wouldn't be enough. Finally, I realized I needed to be honest with Anna. I called her up, figuring it would be better to explain over the phone than through a text. I told her that I just couldn't afford the trip, but that I really wished I could be there. I said that I hoped she understood, and I'd love to celebrate with her in any other way possible. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Anna finally responded. Her voice was flat when she said she was disappointed and mentioned how she thought our friendship meant more. She suggested that maybe I could find a way to come if I really cared, like taking out a small loan or cutting back on other expenses. I was stunned. This wasn't the Anna I knew. I tried to explain that it just wasn't possible for me, but she didn't seem to hear it. The call ended on a cold note, and things quickly started to change after that. Anna stopped replying to my messages, and in the group chat, she was barely acknowledging me. It was like she'd flipped a switch. At first, I tried not to think too much of it. Maybe she was just caught up in the wedding planning. But then I noticed that she'd go out of her way to respond to others in the chat, while my messages would go unanswered. Some of our mutual friends started to pick up on the tension. A few reached out to check on me, saying they understood my situation, but others hinted that maybe I could have tried harder to be there for Anna. The worst part was seeing Anna's social media posts. She started sharing quotes about fake friends and people showing their true colors. It didn't take much to figure out who she was talking about. It's hard to describe how surreal it felt to see our friendship fall apart like this. One minute we were talking about her wedding dress options, and the next she was barely speaking to me. I never imagined that something like money could come between us. But there I was, watching the friendship slip away over a trip I couldn't afford. I didn't want to believe that Anna was intentionally trying to hurt me, but with every cold message and passive-aggressive post, it became harder to ignore. I tried reaching out to her a few more times, hoping we could talk things through and find a middle ground, but she never seemed interested in having that conversation. Each time I thought about it, I felt this mix of sadness and frustration, like was our entire friendship really worth just the price of a plane ticket? I kept wondering if maybe I'd done something wrong or if I was missing something, but every time I looked at my bank account, the reality was clear. It felt like I was losing a huge part of my life over something that should have been so simple to understand. And as Anna continued to drift further away, I started to realize that maybe things would never go back to how they were before. Update 1. A few weeks went by after the awkward call with Anna, and I thought maybe things would calm down. I was still hoping she'd come around, that maybe we'd have another chance to talk things through. But then, one evening, I logged onto social media and saw photos popping up, beautiful glossy invites in cream and gold, with Anna and Kevin's names embossed on the cover. It was official. The wedding invites were out. Except I never got one. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe mine had gotten lost in the mail or sent to the wrong address. But then I noticed a mutual friend's post, captioned with excitement about getting her invite. It hit me that I had been deliberately left out. I tried to brush it off, but it stung. After all these years, I wasn't even on the guest list. A day later, I got a message from a mutual friend, Amber. She'd seen Anna's stories about the invites and asked me if I had received mine yet. I admitted I hadn't, and her response was blunt. "That's weird. You two have been friends forever." It doesn't make sense. It felt like a punch to the gut, hearing it from someone else. Amber said she didn't understand why Anna would exclude me, especially since she knew how close we used to be. But she didn't have any answers either, just a lot of confusion. I decided to try one last time to reach out to Anna. I sent her a text, keeping it light, saying that I understood things had been tense, but that I'd love to be there for her bridal shower if the wedding wasn't possible. Days passed without a single response. It became pretty clear she was ignoring me on purpose. I tried to convince myself that maybe she was busy, but I knew deep down that wasn't the reason. A few days later, I heard from another mutual friend that Anna had removed me from her bridal party too. No explanation, no heads up, just gone. I had been supposed to be one of her bridesmaids, and now, just like that, I was out of the picture. It was almost like she wanted to erase me from her life. Rumors started flying around, especially among our mutual friends. Some of them tried to keep me in the loop, but I could feel the judgment from a few. Anna had been saying things like she felt betrayed that I wasn't coming to her wedding, as if it had been my choice to miss it. And the worst part? She was telling people she didn't care about the money, making it seem like I had just made up an excuse to avoid being there. I even heard that she'd said I could have found a way if I'd really cared enough. It hurt hearing all of that. I thought about everything we'd been through, the late-night phone calls, being there for each other through all the ups and downs, and how she'd always said our friendship was like family. But now, I was the villain in her story, and it felt like she was rewriting everything we'd ever had together. Feeling desperate and confused, I confided in my sister. She listened patiently, and when I finished, she just shook her head. She told me that it sounded like Anna was being unreasonable, that I wasn't the bad guy for setting a financial boundary. I appreciated the support, but it didn't make the hurt go away. I knew I needed to step back from all the drama, so I decided to take a break from social media. I didn't want to see any more posts from Anna about true friends or how she was having the time of her life planning her perfect wedding. It was too painful, watching someone you cared about celebrate their happiness while you felt like you'd been thrown aside. Not long after, I had an awkward run-in with one of Anna's friends, Kelly, at a mutual acquaintance's birthday party. She was clearly uncomfortable when she saw me, and there was this tension in the air. She asked how I'd been, but it felt like she was fishing for information. I kept it short, but I couldn't ignore the way she glanced at her phone right after we talked, like she was about to report back to Anna. It felt like I was living in the middle of a high school drama, and I hated every second of it. In a moment of desperation, I even thought about taking out a personal loan, just to be able to go to the wedding and maybe fix things between us. But that idea quickly fell apart when I realized how foolish it would be to put myself in debt for a trip I couldn't afford. No amount of money would have fixed what was already broken between us. Rumors continued to swirl, and I started hearing from more friends that Anna was painting me as the one who didn't care. She made it sound like I'd turned my back on her when she needed me the most. It hurt to know that some of our mutual friends believed her version of events, and it made me second-guess myself. Was I being selfish? Should I have tried harder? But every time I looked at my bank balance, I knew there was no other choice I could have made. The group chat, once a space where we all shared everything, became tense. People were careful about what they said, avoiding any mention of the wedding when I was around. It was like walking on eggshells, and I knew that everyone had started taking sides, even if no one said it outright. Weeks passed without a word from Anna. Every day that went by, it became clearer that our friendship was slipping away, and there wasn't anything I could do to stop it. It felt like I was mourning a relationship that had been a constant in my life for over a decade, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that Anna had already moved on. Update 2. A few weeks after the whole wedding invitation drama, I got a message from Amber, the mutual friend who'd been trying to stay neutral through all this. She mentioned that she'd been talking to Anna and had managed to convince her to let me come to the bridal shower. According to Amber, she thought it might be a chance for us to clear the air. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but deep down I still hoped maybe things could go back to normal, or at least get some closure. On the day of the bridal shower, I felt a mix of nerves and hope. As I walked into the venue, a trendy little cafe that Anna had rented out, I could feel the shift in the room. Anna glanced my way when I entered, but there was no smile, no warmth. Just a quick look, then she turned back to her other friends, who were huddled around her like a protective wall. I found myself a spot at the edge of the group, trying to blend in and make small talk with a few acquaintances. It didn't take long to realize that Anna's closest friends had decided that I was persona non grata. They barely acknowledged me, and whenever I tried to join in on the conversation, they'd shift their focus back to Anna, talking over me. It was painfully obvious that I wasn't welcome there. The passive-aggressive comments started not long after. One of Anna's friends, who I'll call Amanda, made a point of talking loudly about how some people just don't understand what it means to support their friends during the biggest moments of their lives. She didn't look at me directly, but it was clear who she was talking about. A few others joined in, agreeing with comments about loyalty and sacrifice, and I felt like I was being put on trial without a chance to defend myself. At one point, I saw an opening and managed to catch Anna alone in a quieter corner. I told her that I really wanted to talk, to try and fix whatever had gone wrong between us. Anna barely made eye contact, kept looking around the room, and then just shrugged, muttering that she didn't want to talk about it. Before I could even respond, she walked back to the group, leaving me standing there, feeling completely dismissed. Then came the toast. Anna stood up with a glass of champagne, smiling brightly at the circle of her friends. She thanked everyone for being there, and then, with a pointed look in my direction, she added, "I'm so grateful for the true friends who'll sacrifice anything for you, no matter what." A few people around her nodded and clinked their glasses, and I felt like I'd been slapped in the face. The message was clear, and the room felt smaller and more suffocating than ever. I tried to keep it together, but I could feel the tears welling up. I mumbled an excuse about needing to use the restroom and hurried to the back of the cafe, locking myself in a stall. The humiliation hit me all at once, and I couldn't stop the tears. It was just a small breakdown, but it felt like everything I'd been holding in for weeks was crashing down on me. After a few minutes, I heard a soft knock on the door. It wasn't Anna or any of her close friends, but a woman named Lily. someone who had never really been part of Anna's inner circle. She asked if I was okay, and when I came out, she offered me a tissue. Lily wasn't involved in the drama, and she didn't try to pry or lecture me. She just listened as I vented a bit, and then she gently suggested that maybe it was time for me to think about moving on from the friendship. I appreciated her kindness, even if I wasn't ready to hear it. Eventually, I made my way back out to the party, but the atmosphere was still icy. I decided to leave early, giving Anna a quick wave as I slipped out the door. She didn't seem to care, just glanced in my direction before going back to her conversation. As I walked to my car, I kept replaying everything in my head: the cold shoulders, the pointed comments, Anna's indifference. It was like a movie of our friendship falling apart, and I couldn't figure out how it had all gone so wrong. The drive home was quiet, just me and my thoughts. I tried to hold back the tears, but a few slipped out anyway. It hurt knowing that Anna didn't even seem interested in trying to fix things. It was as if the years we'd spent being there for each other didn't matter anymore. Anna never reached out after the bridal shower, and I knew then that it was really over. She hadn't just distanced herself, she'd shut me out completely. A few days later, Amber messaged me, saying she felt like she was caught in the middle and needed a break from all the tension between me and Anna. I couldn't blame her. The drama had gotten to a point where it was exchanged for everyone involved. Feeling lost, I decided to post my story on Reddit. I poured out everything that had happened, from the wedding invite snub to the bridal shower disaster. I wasn't sure what I was looking for: advice, support, maybe just a way to process everything that had happened. To my surprise, the post blew up. So many people commented with their own stories of friendships that had ended in similar ways. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone, that others had felt the same sting of losing someone they thought would always be there. A few days after my post went viral, Anna blocked me on all social media. It felt like the final nail in the coffin. She didn't even want to leave the door open for a possible reconciliation, and I realized I'd have to come to terms with that. With Anna gone from my life, I felt this strange mix of sadness and relief. I missed the good times we had, but I couldn't ignore how toxic things had become. I kept reminding myself that sometimes even the longest friendships don't survive when life pulls people in different directions. But knowing that didn't make it any easier to let go. Update 3. The day of Anna's wedding arrived, and I woke up with this heavy mix of relief and sadness. Relief, because the worst of the drama was finally coming to an end. Sadness, because I knew Anna was getting married without me, and our years of friendship felt like a distant memory. It was strange to think about how much had changed in such a short time. I had planned to stay off social media completely. I knew the posts would be filled with snapshots of Anna's big day, her perfect dress, the dreamy Maldives backdrop, all the moments I would have been a part of if things had turned out differently. But just as I was about to settle in for a quiet morning, my phone rang. It was my mom, checking in on me. She didn't outright ask about Anna, but I could tell she was worried. She knew how close Anna and I had been, and she was concerned about how I was handling the wedding day. I kept the conversation short, assuring her I was fine, and that I had plans to keep myself busy. She tried to sound cheerful before hanging up, but I could sense the hesitation. She didn't really believe me. After the call, I grabbed my laptop, intending to watch a new show and forget about everything. But just as I got comfortable, a text pinged through from an unfamiliar number. I opened it, and it turned out to be from Anna's cousin, Rachel. She said she'd heard about the falling out and wanted me to know that Anna was still upset about me not coming to the wedding. It caught me off guard. I hadn't spoken to Rachel in years, and now here she was, delivering this message out of nowhere. I stared at the text for a while, letting the words sink in. It brought back that wave of guilt, the one I'd been trying to push away for weeks. Even though I knew I'd made the right decision financially, it still hurt to know that Anna was so upset. I put my phone on silent and tossed it onto the couch, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling settling in my kvenek. The hours crept by slowly. I found myself scrolling through old photos on my laptop, pictures of Anna and me from high school, road trips, college parties, and all those random nights when we'd just hang out and laugh until our sides hurt. It felt like I was watching someone else's life. I tried to tell myself that those memories didn't disappear just because we drifted apart, but it was hard not to feel like they'd been tainted by everything that had happened. Eventually, I pulled myself away from the nostalgia spiral and decided to distract myself with some binge watching. I got through a few episodes of a new series, but my mind kept wandering back to Anna, wondering how her big day was going. I tried to focus on the show, but every few minutes I found myself reaching for my phone, checking for updates, even though I knew I wouldn't find anything I wanted to see. Then, while mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, I came across a tagged post from one of Anna's bridesmaids. I hadn't meant to see it. It just popped up in my feed. The photo was of Anna and Kevin standing on a white sand beach, looking blissfully happy, the ocean behind them reflecting the colors of the sunset. Anna's dress was as gorgeous as I'd imagined, and she was glowing with that kind of happiness that almost seemed to light up the screen. I couldn't look away. A part of me felt a pang of pain, like I'd been left out of this huge moment in her life. But another part of me felt this strange sense of closure. Seeing her so happy, surrounded by the people she'd chosen to be there, it made me realize that maybe this was how it was meant to be. We were living separate lives now, and maybe that was okay. Later in the evening, a couple of my friends stopped by unannounced, carrying a bottle of wine and a bag of snacks. They knew what day it was, and they didn't ask me about Anna or the wedding. We just hung out, eating junk food and watching random shows. Their presence made everything feel a little less heavy, and I was grateful they had thought to come by. That night, after my friends left, I found myself sitting with my journal, scribbling down all the thoughts I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about how much I missed Anna, but I also wrote about how different we'd become. I kept coming back to the idea that maybe our paths had been diverging for a while, even before the wedding drama started. Maybe this was just the final push that brought everything to the surface. As I wrote, I couldn't help but wonder if there was any way I could have made it work, if maybe I could have sacrificed more to be there for her. But each time I thought about the money, about how tight things already were, I knew deep down that I hadn't had any other choice. My financial stability had to come first, even if it meant losing someone I cared about. A little before midnight, I decided to clean up some of the digital clutter on my phone. That's when I noticed an unread email from Anna, dated about a month back. I froze, staring at the subject line. My heart pounded in my chest as I considered opening it, but something held me back. I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever she'd written, or if it would just reopen old wounds. In the end, I left the email unread. Maybe some things were better left unsaid, at least for now. I figured that if there was any chance of moving forward, whether that meant rebuilding the friendship someday or letting it go completely, I needed to focus on where I was now, not on all the what-ifs. With a deep breath, I shut off my laptop and headed to bed. The day had been long, but as I lay there in the dark, I finally felt like I could start to let go, even if just a little bit. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to think about a future that didn't revolve around Anna or the person I used to be when we were still friends.
Update 4. A few months after Anna's wedding, life started to shift in ways I hadn't expected. Work had been keeping me busy, and one afternoon my manager pulled me into a meeting and surprised me with a promotion. It wasn't just a new title, it came with a significant raise, and suddenly the stress of living paycheck to paycheck eased up a bit. It felt like a small victory after everything that had happened. With the extra financial breathing room, I decided it was time to focus on myself. I signed up for a gym membership at a place near my apartment, determined to channel my energy into something positive. It had been a long time since I'd focused on my own health and well-being, and each workout felt like a step toward regaining some control over my life. Around the same time, I started reconnecting with a few old friends. These were people I'd drifted away from during my years of closeness with Anna. It was nice catching up with them, sharing stories and realizing that life had gone on for all of us. Some of them had heard about the falling out with Anna, and they didn't push for details, just offered their support. It was refreshing to be around people who knew me outside of the drama. But of course, the drama wasn't completely over. One day, while grabbing coffee with a mutual friend, they let it slip that Anna had been saying she won, since I didn't get to see her dream wedding. I bit my tongue and let it roll off my shoulders, but it stung knowing she still saw our friendship as some kind of competition. The old me would have jumped right back into the mess, trying to prove a point, but instead, I stayed focused on what was right in front of me. I also kept my social media detox going, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions I made. Without constantly seeing updates about Anna's new life, I realized how much lighter I felt. I didn't have to scroll through passive-aggressive posts or pictures of the perfect wedding I wasn't part of. It gave me the space to just breathe and exist without comparing my life to hers. A few weeks into my new routine, I decided to start seeing a therapist. I needed help sorting through the whirlwind of emotions that came with losing someone who'd been a huge part of my life. Therapy became a place where I could lay it all out, the betrayal, the guilt, the nagging question of whether I could have done more. My therapist didn't sugarcoat things but helped me see that I wasn't entirely to blame. She pointed out how unrealistic Anna's expectations had been, and that wanting to maintain my financial stability wasn't selfish, it was necessary. In the midst of all this, an old friend from high school, Emily, reached out to me. She'd heard about the fallout with Anna and wanted to catch up. We met for lunch at a little cafe downtown, and it was like no time had passed. We laughed about old memories and shared where life had taken us since then. It felt good to remember that I had a history beyond Anna, that there were people who still cared about me. One morning, I ran into Anna's sister at a local cafe. We hadn't seen each other in ages, but she came over and gave me a quick hug. She mentioned that Anna had been struggling with some regrets lately. According to her, Anna missed me, though she never directly said it. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded and thanked her for letting me know. As I walked back to my car, I wondered if those regrets meant Anna wanted to reconcile, or if it was just a case of her looking back with rose-colored glasses. When I told a few of my new friends about the encounter, they reminded me that I was better off without someone who couldn't respect my financial limits. Their support was a solid reminder that I didn't need to dive back into the old mess. It was time to focus on what came next. And then, out of nowhere, a new opportunity came knocking. I received a job offer from a company overseas, something I'd never considered before. It was in a country I'd always dreamed of visiting, and the position came with an attractive package that included relocation support. The idea of starting fresh somewhere new, far away from the memories of the last few months, felt like a lifeline. I spent a few days mulling over the offer, weighing the pros and cons. I thought about what it would mean to leave behind everything here, but the more I considered it, the more it felt like the right move. It wasn't just about the job, it was about giving myself the chance to reinvent my life without the shadow of the past hanging over me. Before I made my final decision, I remembered Anna's email. It had been sitting unread in my inbox for weeks. I opened it one night, bracing myself for whatever she had to say. The message was a mix of blame and sadness, like she was trying to explain how hurt she'd been, but also wanted me to acknowledge that I'd hurt her too. It wasn't the apology I'd secretly hoped for, but it wasn't a total attack either. I read through it twice, then closed my laptop. I didn't respond. Instead, I let the words sink in and decided that some things were better left without a reply. Anna and I had both said our piece, in different ways, and it was time to let that chapter close. The next morning, I accepted the job offer. I felt a wave of excitement wash over me, thinking about the possibilities ahead. For the first time in months, I felt like I had something to look forward to that wasn't tied to the past. I packed up my things, started making plans for the move, and told my friends that a new adventure was on the horizon. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to leave the past behind and see where this new path takes me. Maybe Anna and I were always meant to grow apart, and maybe this is how it was supposed to end. Either way, I'm ready for whatever comes next. Update 5. The weeks leading up to my big move went by in a blur. My apartment, once filled with memories and mementos, slowly turned into a mess of cardboard boxes and bubble wrap. Packing up my life for a new adventure overseas felt surreal. Each item I wrapped brought a mix of excitement and nostalgia: my old college mug, photos from better days, and even the little trinkets Anna and I had exchanged over the years. It was like closing the door on a whole chapter of my life, one box at a time. My new friends, the ones who had stood by me through all the drama, surprised me with a small farewell party a few nights before my flight. We gathered at my favourite pizza place, and they made sure it was a night to remember. There were laughs, a few emotional toasts, and even a bit of karaoke. It struck me then how much support I had gained in just a few months, how these people, who hadn't known me for very long, had become my lifeline. It felt like a proper send-off, one that left me feeling grateful and a little sad to say goodbye. Just when I thought I had everything wrapped up, life threw me a curveball. A few days before my flight, as I was double-checking my travel documents, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I picked it up anyway, thinking it might be something related to the move. Instead, I heard Anna's voice on the other end. I hadn't expected to hear from her again, especially not like this. She started talking right away, her voice a little shaky. She wanted to apologize, to say she had been thinking about everything that had happened between us. She mentioned feeling abandoned during her wedding planning, how the pressure from her in-laws and the stress of organizing the event had made her lash out. It felt like she was trying to explain why things had gone so wrong, almost like she was searching for a way to make sense of it all. I listened quietly, letting her get it all out, but this time I didn't bend. When she finished, I took a deep breath and told her that while I appreciated the apology, I had to do what was right for myself. I reminded her that I hadn't refused to come out of spite, but because I genuinely couldn't afford it. I wasn't trying to be hurtful, just honest. The line went quiet for a moment, and then I heard Anna start to cry. She admitted that she missed our friendship and wasn't sure if things could ever go back to how they used to be. For a second, I felt a pang of the old connection we used to have, the bond that had felt unbreakable. But I knew that too much had changed. I told her that I would always cherish the good memories, but that I was moving forward with my life. It was a tough conversation, but I kept my voice steady, knowing that this was something I needed to say. Anna hesitated before responding, her voice sounding small. It felt like she didn't want to let go, like she was trying to hold on to whatever thread of the past she could grasp. But in the end, we said goodbye on a civil note, a strange kind of peace between us. I hung up, feeling like I had finally laid to rest something that had been haunting me for months. After the call, I felt lighter, as if a weight I'd been carrying around had finally lifted. That night, I wrote a final update on Reddit, sharing the unexpected conversation and how I was ready for a fresh start. I poured out the details of our talk, my decision to move on, and the hope I felt for the future. I didn't expect much from the post, but it blew up again. The comments were flooded with people sharing their own stories of friendship breakups, offering words of encouragement and telling me I wasn't alone. It was like a virtual hug from thousands of strangers, reminding me that I had made the right choice. The day of my flight finally arrived. I hugged my friends goodbye, promising to keep in touch, and headed to the airport with my bags. As I sat on the plane, watching the city I had called home shrink beneath me, a mix of fear and excitement settled in my chest. I didn't know what this new chapter held, but I was ready to face it head-on. Landing in the new country felt like stepping into a different world. The air was different, the streets unfamiliar, but there was a sense of freedom in the unknown. I checked into my temporary apartment and spent my first evening exploring the city. The lights, the sounds, the buzz of a new place, it all made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in a long time. That night, as I lay in a new bed in a new country, I thought about how far I'd come. The hurt from losing Anna was still there, like a faint scar, but it wasn't the open wound it had once been. I knew that I couldn't change the past, but I could choose what came next. For the first time in a long while, the future felt wide open, full of possibilities that were entirely my own. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized that maybe this was what starting over truly felt like, not erasing what came before, but building something new with the pieces that remained. A new chapter, a new city, and a new chance to find out who I was outside of everything that had happened.